That was actually the wrong intro, but oh well. Today I've got a gun that is very special to me. This is my own personal VFC Scar L, and I've modified it to be sort of an extended version of a Scar L, basically resembling the SSR. So, in a sense, I have a Scar L SSR that I've created here. And what we're going to do today, we're going to tear it down all the way down, even to inside the gearbox, because it is having a bit of a issue, and the air nozzle is not moving back and forth. So that means one of two things: the air nozzle broke off on the tappet plate, or it came off. Either way, I have to go in and put it back on, and so I figured why not make a video about it, since a lot of people probably want to know how to even disassemble this thing, because a lot of people are saying it's complicated. I really don't think so. Maybe this video will help you guys decide. First things first, I'm going to take this battery out of this little battery pouch, just my LiPo. And I don't think I need to take anything else off the external side, so we're just going to go ahead and start disassembling the gun. I normally try and keep it in semi, and then you just want to remove these front pins. I can do it with my fingers, it's that easy. I don't think these rear pins come out. No, they do not. And then I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this on camera, but I'm going to try, is you're basically just going to take it and wiggle it a little bit. Actually, I need to first remove the stock. I forgot about that. And the stock is just removed. Let's see. I'm trying to remember. I have not taken this gun apart in quite a long time. I'm pretty sure it just slides off, but you have to depress something if I remember correctly. Or no, the stock comes off after you actually get the receiver off, so yeah, I'm going to have to do this off camera just because it takes a little bit of muscle to get it behind, but you basically grab, need to be careful, I almost just yanked my MOSFET wire in two. That would have been pretty bad. Need to take that out. If I can get this rear buttstock off, there we go. I actually have access to the MOSFET unit that I've got shoved in this rear side. I'm sorry you guys can't see this right now, but there's really not too much to see. So now that I've got that pulled out, I'm just going to take my MOSFET wire, and I can show you this another time. It's a little tricky to show on camera at the moment. I'm just going to try and make sure I don't tear anything and that it gets out nice and easy. Because it is quite a small hole that I have drilled for it. But I did that just so it would not affect the look of the gun at all if I ever wanted to resell. But basically, I now have my upper right there and my lower with my MOSFET wire out the back end. And that is just because it is a fully featured MOSFET. It is hardwired in. I've got the hop up right in there. But as far as for this one, I'm done with this piece. Here's my MOSFET unit, if you guys just wanted to see how I've got it rigged up. I converted the gun over to Dean's, plugged it into the MOSFET. This is a fairly straightforward MOSFET. You just plug it in, one side of the MOSFET, and that little black piece here is where the MOSFET wire plugs in. And then the other end you plug, normally you would plug your battery right here, but I have an extension wire that I wired up because I needed a little bit longer. And so that it could fit right out the top of the stock into my battery bag. But I'm done with the upper receiver for now. It's mainly, this video is just about the lower assembly. But as far as this step, getting here was fairly easy. I mean, there wasn't really any difficulties in it at all. I'm probably also going to need to clean the gearbox a little bit because I haven't done that in quite a long time. But yeah, as you can see, my air nozzle is freely sliding in there, which means it did come off the tappet plate. Now it is turning, but it's not completely pulling straight out, so maybe there's a little bit of hope that it didn't break and that it just popped off. That's what I'm hoping for, because trying to find these SCAR air nozzles is not always easy, even though I think the VFCs might actually use a standard M4 nozzle, but I'm not completely sure about that. If they do, that'd be awesome, because I have tappet plates and air nozzles to put in it if it is broken. But if it does use a proprietary air nozzle, then I am going to be in a little bit of a problem. And I do need to grab a couple tools out of my box, such as Allen keys and a couple other things. I just have to find them. Pretty sure this is it, the one that I need. If not, I'm going to see if I can find my multi-tool. It's the last place that I put it, which it doesn't look like it is. I'm not sure where it is. This isn't good. Sort of need that. That's a fairly useful tool. Oh, I better know where it is. Where's my toolkit that I put in here? This is being tricky. Seeing someone, probably myself, move my tools. So, I'm going to check inside my tackle box and see if it might be in there. I don't know why it would be, because that's normally where I just have parts for guns. And it is not in here. Darn, that would have made everything easier. Where could I have put that? I'm sorry for that. Mic fell off the table. Always trying to get things. Not exactly how I wanted the video to go, to be honest. But sometimes these things just happen. Well, I cannot seem to find it anywhere unless... There it is. It was in the black tool case. Forgot I put them in there. That's what I used to travel with when I'm going to games. It's my little personal toolkit when I'm at the field. I go ahead and take off this pistol grip on the bottom. These Allen keys were extremely tight. If I hadn't had the right Allen key, I probably would have stripped it. And listen to the whys. Normally when you're dealing with Allen keys from any airsoft gun, they're going to be in the metric Allen key set. So just try and have a metric Allen keys when you're working on airsoft guns. Because they are mostly made in China and Taiwan, so they're not going to use the normal US customary system. They are going to be using metric, so just be aware of that. It is something that, like, I can easily say that it's pretty much metric is used on every single one of my guns. And if I didn't have a metric set of Allen keys, it would quite piss me off. But thankfully I do, so I don't have to worry about it. Just going to remove these motor wires. I know that I want to put an upgraded motor on this someday. I might actually put the motor that's in my G3 right now in this. Just because the motor that I have for it is a Matrix 3000 motor, and it is a hoss. I mean, the VFC motor is not that bad, but it's definitely not that much of a torque motor. And for the MOSFET system that I have, I definitely want more of a torque motor. This is basically a standard torque motor. I mean, you can see I can turn it fairly easily. There's not much give in it. So I will be upgrading the motor in this very, very soon. If I don't do it like during this video, which is completely possible. I've done it before. Let's see. I need... here are my big screwdriver set. That normally works better for taking off a motor grip. Here we go. Just gotta find the right bit, which I apparently never seem to find. Found it. Alright, so I'm just going to stick that in there like that. With the light, so I'm going to have to take it off camera for just a second. Not sure if this screw bit was actually going to fit. Might be a little too big. Which looks like it is. I'll find a smaller one. That one might work. Keeps happening in all my tools. They keep disappearing on me. Those are all torque bits. I don't need a torque bit right now. I need a Phillips head, which is what I should have the most of. For some reason, I don't. Well, I'll try this one. Hopefully it fits. If not, I'll just have to get my other screwdriver. And it is not fitting, so I've got to find my other screwdriver now. Now I've got to figure out wherever I put that thing. which that one shouldn't be too hard to find considering it's black and red. And I dropped my mic again, I apologize. It is balancing slightly on my table, so it's not the best setup in the world. But it works somewhat. There it is. That's a flathead. I don't need that. Where's the Phillips head? I'm probably going to need that later. As well as this one. Where's the Phillips head? I use that thing all the time. How could I have lost it? Did it fall on the floor, perhaps? No. I don't know how these things disappear on me. Things that I tend to use the most always tend to disappear. Guess that's just the way it is. Yeah, I guess I'll have to use this small one. It'll just be a little trickier to get it out. Oh, wait. Hung it up. There we go. Yeah, sometimes I even forget where my brain is sometimes. There we go. Okay. I'm just taking out the inner screws of the pistol grip. Pretty basic if you've ever seen a disassembly video. Just about anything that uses an M4 style grip, they're the exact same. Just because it is a version 2 gearbox and it still uses pretty much an identical grip to an M4. You just want to slightly and slowly wiggle it out so you don't lose any screws or anything. Careful with the wires so you don't catch them. Just gently ease it out. Let's set that over there for now. Okay, so now we have this. And yes, on the VFCs, you do have to remove the magazine release. On some scars you don't have to, like on the older classic armies, but on these you do have to. So I'm going to grab, can't reach it, desk is too wide. Grab my more precise set of Allen keys, also in metric. Too big. The screw is right up in the bottom of this little circle piece right here for the magazine release. You're just going to turn that counterclockwise until the piece pops up. You do want to be holding it though because a spring is holding it on, so just be noted of that. I don't think the screw falls out because of the way it's in there, but just make sure you don't lose it if it does. And then I'm just going to grab the spring out of there, and then the release should come straight from the other side, just like that. Now this thing is sitting in here with this back piece here. You're just going to unscrew this one big screw that's basically holding in the gearbox, as well as these two little Phillips head screws. These are what is holding in the wire connectors. So these two little Phillips head screws that are right back here, as well as this one big black screw in the back of the gearbox. Just take both of those out with a small Phillips head. I'm going to do the big one first. I've only had to take this gun apart, I think, twice, and one of it was so I could clean it out. The other time was to install my MOSFET, and that was about 6 months ago. I got this for Christmas of this past year, and it has worked like a champ ever since, so I'm really hoping nothing broke, because that would be bad. I mean, I do run this thing on a LiPo, on an 11120C LiPo, so I mean, I actually expected something to happen, because I run this thing hard with a lot of ammo. This thing's probably already had 20,000, 25,000 rounds put through it in 6 months, which is a lot. I play more of a support gunner role, so I spray a lot of ammo downrange. Basically, once you get those two little screws taken out on the smaller ones, you just lift this piece straight up, and it should come off fairly easily. This is what is going to be holding your motor connectors from going anywhere. I actually had to modify this piece. I just took a Dremel and took a notch out right here, if you can see that. I did that for my MOSFET wire so it could fit up in there. But then what you're going to do is you're going to slowly remove your little pins here that are for your wires, and just make sure they don't go anywhere. You just want to make sure that they stay there. And now, I'm pretty sure there's a couple other pins. Yeah, there's a pin right here that's holding in the gearbox. You're just going to want to tap that out. I'm going to use this right here just because it has a flat end on it. Let's give this. And I think that comes out. It's possible that actually doesn't come out on this. I did just remember though, you do have to take the selector, select fires off. That is something. So you're just going to want to, again, hold it and twist it slightly. You don't have to twist it a lot because it will pretty easily come off. And there's going to be, I almost lost it, which is what I was about just to say. It has a tiny little metal ball that sits on this spring. Do not lose it, because that is, if you lose that, you will have like a really crappy select fire that just won't click, and that is really bad. You don't want that. So just make sure you do not lose that, as well as the spring that sits inside of the selector fire. Again, you're going to do the same with the other side, wherever the hole is, on the top or the bottom. One side is on the top, the other side is on the bottom for some reason. Again, it's going to have that ball and spring, so just be noted of that. So I'm going to slowly lift up, and the ball actually stayed in its place right there. So I'm going to set those off to the side. I'm actually going to set them inside of the select fire so that they don't have anywhere to go and roll around. I'm going to set those off to the side. Now there's these Allen keys on the side of the body right here. Again, just going to take an Allen key and take those off as well. They shouldn't be that tight, but as soon as you take them off, they're going to have this metal piece on it. Just leave the metal piece on there so you know what it's to. It's pretty straightforward. You can't exactly mess it up because there are pins to line it up when you're putting it back on. Makes it pretty straightforward. Same with both sides. And now this is out, and the gearbox should lift straight out. Now you have to be careful because there are some gears involved for the select fire. You just want to make sure. This is probably the most aggravating part of these scars, is the fact of when you're putting this back together. Really, these two little circle pieces are a pain to get lined back up. And I will have another video showing that if I don't actually get through with it in this one, which I might, I don't know. Alright, but now we have our lower receiver. Just going to set that off to the side. So now, I'm going to take my hat off just so it's not covering the camera. We are going to very carefully, this is a very aggravating part of this because it requires the freaking smallest Allen key in the world. I don't even know if I have one small enough. Which I don't think I do, unless this one has one smaller, which it doesn't look like. There's a tiny, tiny Allen key in the bottom of that, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it out without finding one of my pistol front sight adjustment Allen keys, which I might actually have somewhere, but I have no clue where it would be at. So I hope I can get this out. I really don't like it with how small it has to be. I thought they could have done a better system with it, but I guess not. Well, I mean, yeah, they could have, but they didn't. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to find an Allen key that'll fit that. I don't even remember if I put the Allen keys back in there the last time I put it together. I think I just squished them together, which I mean is what a lot of people tell you to do, just because it's such a pain. This one might actually work. It doesn't feel like it's actually in anything. It feels like it's still just too big. That one won't even fit in there. So, I mean, if you couldn't tell, that was part of the select fire parts for the ambidextrous. That is what that does. Which really, I don't need ambidextrous fire. I only use the left side with my thumb, and I don't swap hands very often. But I need to make sure that it stays that way just for future purposes. And yeah. So, I gotta figure out how I'm gonna get those things apart. Because my guess is they're not gonna pry apart like I want them to. No, but they are loose, but that does mean that screw is still in there. And I'm not sure if I have anything to take that screw out without flipping my room upside down looking for the world's smallest Allen key. So I'm going to keep searching through this bag and hope that I actually have one. Even though it would be so hard to find if I did, because it is so small. I'm lucky to find it half the time I need it. There's an X-Acto knife, I don't need that. There's my pocket knife, I don't need that. Oh, is that it? No, that's part of the bag. Those are razor blades, cutting stuff. I do do not want to have to be searching for the world's smallest Allen key right now. Just because I have little to no faith that I'm going to be able to find it. Because that's how small this thing is. So yes, there are some things frustrating about this gearbox, or this gun, as far as disassembly. But if you have all the right tools, it's not really that bad as far as a SCAR goes. Because the old SCARs had things about them that were also extremely complicated. And sure, there are ways they could have done it differently, but what are you going to do? I apologize for things taking longer than they really should, but I wasn't expecting to have to deal with all this. Of finding things. And there's a spring that is not setting right. So if we fix that. I just knocked it out of it. That I did. Just fit those back in there. So it's not in the tackle box. Not really sure where I would find one, even though I had multiple at one time because I knew they were going to be useful for times like this. I have no idea what I did with any of them. So that was my bad. Is this the one? I think this might actually be my smallest one. I don't know if I was using the smallest one or not. Well, that is not it. That is bigger than that one. That does not fit. Huh. Let's see. These might be a couple of keepers. Maybe. Probably not. But I'm going to try it anyway. Let's see if I can try anything else. Doesn't look like I'm going to be able to. So, maybe one of these will be the right fit, but I doubt it. That won't even fit up in there. And neither will that one. So, dang it. Is it possible that this is small enough? No, of course not. Alright, I'm going to have to find that tiny thing, and I have no clue where the last one I saw was. These things are literally minuscule. And I thought I put them all in a special place, so I wouldn't lose them. And if I did, I don't remember what that special place was. So it's sort of screwing me over right now. I'm going to have to move the camera a little bit to see if they're under here. Which they were not, and I just ended up ruining my camera setup. So I'm going to try and fix that real quick. I hate having to find things. It sucks. Okay, that's about as best as I'm going to get it. I did find this, so might as well. I'm going to try it just to see. It will not even be close, of course. I thought this one that I had, this is my smallest Allen key I currently have. And it fits inside the hole, but it's not small enough to actually fit in the Allen key that's inside of there. Yeah, I just cannot get that thing out. I might as well try the other one just to see. Yep, that's not going to work. Nope. Okay, so this video is turning out pretty good so far, I guess. Not. So far, half of it's been me trying to look for a tool. A tool that I forgot I actually needed. Okay, so yeah, sometimes these things are a little tricky. If I had actually remembered this, the fact that I needed the world's smallest Allen key, I probably would have been a little less gung-ho about doing this right now, without knowing where that specific Allen key was. Because there's no way that I'm going to be able to find that thing. There's just no way. Although, I might have something I can try. Which I'm not sure if any of these would be small enough or not, but might as well try it. Oh, that's actually way too small. I actually found something smaller. That's surprising. Oh, did I get it? I think I might have gotten it. Maybe? You gonna humor me? Just a little? No. Humor me at all, please. Make me happy. Where's that screwdriver? That would make this a lot easier. There it is. Nope, not gonna work. Darn it. Will this one work? No. Tiny things just do not get along with me at all. I just don't like it. Oh, I can actually see the screw. Yes! I got it. Not even going to worry about taking the other one out because it's not needed. Okay, I got it out somehow. Hopefully that is the most difficult part of this. If it is not, then I definitely didn't remember having to do it beforehand. So now it's pretty simple. Just take off all the Phillips head screws on the gearbox. Normally, if you loosen them just a little bit, you can twist out the rest with your hand. I wish I had my electric screwdriver for this part. Make things a lot easier. But it's out of batteries, and I don't exactly know where the charger is. It's somewhere around here, except someone put it in a box. That someone being me. Like a dummy. Now, a lot of these marks on the gearbox concern me, but, well, I mean, they worried me at first, and then I looked closer, and they were actually just marks. They weren't, like, any damage to the actual gearbox. But I guess that's just where they rubbed up against the lower receiver when putting in and taking out. So, I mean, it's not the biggest deal, but when you first look at it, don't think it's a crack, especially if it's dark, because it's just grease where it's rubbed on this metal, because it is pretty sure it's an anodized metal, which is pretty nice, makes it strong. Go ahead and take all these out. Some might be tighter than others. I don't think any of the stock ones should be extremely tight, but I always tend to tighten some of mine a lot, just depending on the screwdriver that I'm using at the time. If I feel like I'm going to strip it, I normally don't tighten it that tight. But there's 4 long screws and 4 short screws. And now I get to do the fun part, which is actually taking apart the 2 halves. I'm going to try and make sure that my shim job that I did, that spent hours on, is not going to get ruined, because that would suck. I just got to be really, really careful. And let's see. I'm going to go ahead and take a lot of this out. Some reason there's all kinds of dust in my gearbox. I don't like that. Why is there all kinds of crappy dust in my gearbox? Why? Well, my first guess was the piston, but that's not it. The piston hasn't had any wear on it. Anywhere. Which is really surprising, because it's a clear plastic piston. I actually hate this piston. I love the piston head, though. I hate the piston, because it's crappy, cheap, clear plastic. Then what is causing all of this dust? It is caked in here. What in the world could be causing that? Is it my... Oh, that is what. My tappet plate snapped. That's exactly what. It's just been sitting there smacking that, creating dust. Yippee. I get to clean all this out now. So, it wasn't what I thought it was, but it did have something to do with it. Oh, it actually snapped in 2 places. Wow. And this is why I hate this crappy, cheap, clear plastic. Because the tappet plate is made out of the same material that the piston is made out of. I can't stand this stuff. And I know everyone said replace your tappet plates and everything for the VFCs, now I see why. This stuff is terrible. I mean, it broke into 3 separate pieces. That's ridiculous. I'm really glad I have a nice strong tappet plate that I can set in this thing, which I don't know why I didn't before, now that I think about it. Thankfully no damage to the air nozzle or nothing. It still looks fine. It is not, I don't think it is a standard M4 nozzle. It actually looks shorter than a standard M4 nozzle, but I'll have to test that at another time. Looks like I'm going to have to completely take all the parts out of this gearbox, clean it, and then put everything back together. I am glad, though, that I have the parts on hand to get this thing back up and running and on the battlefield once again. So it's not a complete tragedy for me because I have so many extra tappet plates. But it is good to know that stuff like that is going to happen. So any of you planning on getting a VFC Scar, the L or the H, because I know they have pretty much the exact same parts in them, other than I think a spring, make sure that you, if you ever think about it, make sure you get a different piston. I would recommend, like, a polycarb piston is alright, but make sure it has full metal teeth, or at least a half metal tooth. For any kind of higher FPS or high speed build, you're gonna want that. I might think about replacing this one while I have it out. But I mean, there's no wear on it, so I don't have an immediate need to. Which I might actually put a larger spring in this gun, as well as a different motor. And then I probably will swap over the piston. But I do really like the piston head. The piston head's really nice. It's full metal and all that. The cylinder, though, I've got to get a full, a non-ported cylinder, though, because I have put an extended inner barrel in my Scar, so it no longer needs a ported cylinder. Can't remember. Did I put a Zorbo pad in here? I don't think I did. The angle of engagement on this gun was actually really good, so I don't think I had to correct it for anything. But I am going to have to completely clean out this gearbox now, because it is filled with all kinds of gunk, just from where it demolished that tappet plate on both ends. I mean, it's just a fine layer of dust all throughout the gearbox. It is nasty. And it is not something I want to be doing right now, but something that needs to be done. So remove that spring, set that off to the side. Go ahead and carefully take off the gears. Yeah, I did have shims under there, so I need to make sure they get put back on the proper gear. And I do still have these self-shimming gears on both the selector and the spur gear, just because I don't feel like I'm upgrading it to the point where it needs just straight shims. So I'm perfectly fine using the auto shim set. They seem to work perfectly fine for me right now. They're doing really well. I realize I could probably loosen up the gears a little bit if I didn't have to use them, but it just makes everything easier. That, and I don't exactly have any shims right now to fully reshim the gun, so that is the other reason. I've got to buy another shim set. All of these went on the bottom of the bevel gear. There's quite a few on the bottom of the bevel gear, actually. And this goes on the bottom of the sector gear. I might actually reshim this thing while it's out. I don't know yet. It's all maybes at this point. I'm going to take the trigger off. And just so it's easier to clean, I am going to actually take it all the way down. So I'm going to remove the cutoff lever and the trigger assembly. Just going to loosen that up, take these wires, make sure none of them get damaged. MOSFET wire still looks in good condition, so I'm just going to take all of this and set it to the side. Take my cutoff lever. Actually, I need to remove that spring first. So I'm going to take just small Allen key and take that out. This whole thing is just covered in this nasty dust. I'm going to have to just clean every single piece of this. Ooh, this is not going to be a fun one. Because it's all fine, really fine powder. I don't even know if you can see it on camera. I can try and hold it up, but it won't be in focus. But it's all throughout there. There's like yellow and white powder all throughout it. And I'm not going to refocus it just because that'd be a pain. But yeah, there's like fine powder just all through it. I might as well clean it, re-grease it. Just do what it needs. And it should be better off that way. Let's see. I also want to check my gears, make sure there's no wear on any of those, any damage or anything. Spur gear looks good. Sector looks fine. Bevel is what I'm worried about just because of the lipo. Bevel looks perfectly fine, nothing wrong with it. That's good. Also gonna check the pinion gear while I'm thinking about it. Yeah, pinion gear, just fine, no problems at all. So I might actually take that pinion gear and move it onto the motor that I plan on putting in here, which is my Matrix, and I will put that motor into my G3, probably, if I can't find another strong high torque motor. I might actually buy one because I have a little bit of money, so I can have a good motor in both. I'm thinking about getting one of those Big Dragon 160 motors and putting in it, just because I've heard a lot of good things about them. Or an AMP 5000. Thought about those too. Was not even thinking anywhere close to a Sistema, just because there's so many other things that perform just as well as a Sistema for about half the price of a Sistema. So Sistemas are old news. I don't know why people keep talking about them. I realize they were big in the old days of Airsoft, but times have changed. It's time to get over yourself. Sistema is no longer the gods of Airsoft. There are plenty of companies who do just as well in their parts and all that other stuff. I think the only thing Sistema still has going for them are their PTW lines, and everything in those things are proprietary, so I don't even want one for that matter. If something were to break, I'd have to spend $40 to replace it, which sucks. But I'm going to be right back. I'm going to go grab some things to clean this thing out with, and then I will be right back. So just hold tight. I realize this is actually live streaming right now, so I can't pause the video and then come back. So just treat this as you are watching a live stream rather than a recorded video. Just because doing these live streams are a lot easier for me, and they don't actually take up hard drive space, and I don't have to render them or anything else, so that's what makes it a lot easier. This is why I do it like this. Otherwise, I would have a terabyte of freaking footage on my hard drive that would take days to upload. So just sit tight for a second, fast forward the video, do what you need to do. But I'm going to set it on that real quick, because that's what I have normally set up for. Actually, I'm going to set it, well, I don't have any of these that work, do I? Well, there's that. Screw it. I'll just leave it on the same video. I don't have anything for Airsoft live streams to pause the video, so I will be right back. I'm going to go get things to clean the gearbox out with. Okay, I got something that's going to work. I actually need to take these bushings out really quick. The VFCs are always really hard to get out because they're, I like it and I don't like it, because when I'm trying to get them out, they're such a pain. But I'd rather have them completely in there than not. There we go. Just going to remove the selector plate just for now. And then I'm going to take... Actually, I don't want to take that. Where is... Yeah, this will work. This is about the size and it won't harm the bushing at all. Oh, these are in there really tight. I'll just have to clean them while they're in here. Those are in there extremely tight, which I think they're metal bushings. I'd like it if it had ball bearings, which I might actually, I have some 8mm ball bearing bushings that I might actually put in here. These are metal bushings as far as I can tell, but they're solid metal bushings. And I'd rather have ball bearings for something, since I'm doing a high speed / high FPS build, so let's hope I can actually get these out. I'll put on a softer surface, see if I can knock them out. They're not wanting to come easily, I can tell you that. I don't even know if it's moving at all. Hang on a sec. One out, finally. Oh, that is why. It seems they glued them onto the gearbox. I actually don't like that. I thought they were just in there on their own will, being tight. But no, they actually glued them. Two down. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be replacing these. Alright, finally got all three. They are indeed metal, they are indeed solid. Yeah, those are metal. And they were glued. I don't like the fact that they had to be glued in. But they did leave a nice little shiny circle in the gearbox where they were. And it seems when they popped out, all the glue came with it. So it wasn't strong glue, but it was glue nonetheless. And I'm going to go ahead and take out the ones on the other side as well. One out. These are stubborn, I'll give them that. Two down. And three down. Again, glued in. Don't like that, but the glue came with them as they came out, and no damage to the gearbox. So just be noted of that. They can come out. They just will come out only with a fight. And while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to go ahead and get those 8mm bushings out of my tackle box. I have ceramics in here. I'm just gonna find them. Now, I really wish I knew where my other three ball bearing bushings went. Is that plastic? Why do I have a... It is plastic. Where is it? Can't tell. These are plastic. Why do I even have these in my possession? These should be burned. Those are getting thrown in the trash. This painting gear is eat up. I'm not putting it in any gun. Putting that in the trash. Where are my good ceramic bearings? These are the ones that I want. Yes. All of these others go back in the box. So all I want are these nice, clean ceramic bearings. These were expensive, so I'm going to use them in my best gun. Because I actually forgot that I had them. Also, I'm going to put that cylinder on it, because it is a non-ported cylinder. Any other smaller upgrades I want to do while I'm thinking about it? Going to put... Is it this type of plate? The red one. Or the black one. I'm actually going to go with the black one. It looks a little stronger. And while I have the tackle box open, I will go ahead and do M4 air nozzle to SCAR air nozzle comparison. And the SCAR is different, but is it? Yes, the SCAR one is not, it's like half a millimeter longer. I mean, it's so hard to tell. But it is different compared to the M4. Thankfully, it does have the O-ring inside, so not really a need to upgrade. It's already an air seal nozzle, which is what you want. As far as just standard upgrades to this, I don't think it needs really any. And I don't say that about a lot of guns. I'm glad I can say it about this one, though. I mean, it's got the very nice ball bearing spring guide. Full metal ball bearing spring guide, which is really nice. I am definitely putting a different spring on this. This spring has only been getting me about 340 or 50 FPS on a .25. I want a little bit more than that. I don't need a lot, but I would like a little bit. So I will be replacing that, as well as testing my air compression and all that, because I don't think I've done that on this gearbox yet. I just basically been using it out of the box with a MOSFET. Because back when I bought this, I didn't have a lot of pieces to use. And I'm not sure if I should be using this to clean it. I need something a little bit more solid, otherwise it's going to leave a lot of residue. So, I'll be right back again. Alright, I found something much better to use for this. It's, it won't leave a residue when I'm actually cleaning things with it. Just a lot tougher in general. Clean the piston tracks. That is probably the most important aside from the gears. So if the piston can't move freely, then we got a problem. This thing is just caked so bad on there. And I know exactly why. It's because I tried test firing this thing without any BBs, so I wouldn't have been able to know that it was broken. Which, don't ever do. Don't ever draw fire your gun. I was only doing it for a couple shots, but those couple shots were obviously enough to completely gunk up my gearbox. So it just goes to show you, even a high-end, almost $400 gun is not necessarily LiPo ready. And I mean, as far as VFC goes, I love VFC still. That one little problem did not set me off VFC. I just think they probably should have done it a little differently. But they also don't claim that you should be running a LiPo. Most of these guns are built for a 9.6 volt battery, or at least a 7.2 volt LiPo. Not exactly 11.1, because an 11.1 wouldn't even fit in the stock of the gun. and I needed some water there. But an 11.1 would not fit in the stock of this Scar, so they probably didn't plan on someone using an 11.1 volt with it, which is, I mean, had it not been using an 11.1, it probably wouldn't have broken. This thing gets probably around 25 to 26 rounds per second with that 11.1 on there, and that is pretty fast. I mean, it's nowhere near a super high-speed build, but it's faster than what they had tested this gun for. And I mean, a simple fix will make sure that it runs perfectly fine and everything else is golden. But just know that without that fix, you're going to be in the same boat that I was with a tappet plate shattered in 3 places. And I'm probably going to have a shattered piston here soon. But because there's no wear on it currently, I'm going to keep it as it is just because it is extremely light. At least until I can afford an upgraded piston. Because this thing does need to be running here in by July 19th. So I've got to make sure that I get this and a couple of my other guns that seem to be having electrical problems back up before then, because I plan on having a few friends go with me if they want it. Just trying to get all this little gunk out that's stuck to the grease of the gun. This side is pretty clean. And I'm going to get this front piece where the tappet plate slides, because that also needs to be nice and clean. I'm not even sure if I ever re-greased this gun. The grease that was used by VFC is actually really nice. So I don't even know if I had a need to re-grease it. Now, however, I will. And I can use the grease that I know I love and trust pretty well. So, not the biggest deal. It was going to have to be done sooner or later anyway. It's getting on 6 months. It was about time that it needed to be heavily cleaned. So, I guess it wasn't all bad. I do wish that it had worked, though, for the last game that it was used, because it would have been quite helpful for the Armageddon tank, because the M60's air nozzle had broken that morning, and so we had to end up using my backup M4 on the top of the Armageddon tank during Sorrow Rain, which, if you guys have seen that video, that is why there's an M4 on top of the tank rather than the M60. Once the M60 gets fixed, that is going to be the only gun that is ever going to be used on Armageddon. So, I've just got to get it fixed. We've got to order a new tappet plate and air nozzle for it, which hopefully my friend does really soon, because I have to take it to Resurrection Airsoft on the 19th for another game. This is just a normal game day with our normal game types. It is not a event of any kind, other than like just a normal playtime event. Okay. I hate gunk. Gunk is just not fun to deal with. If it was just bad grease is one thing, because as long as you get the majority of it out, normally it's pretty fine. But with gunk, you want to make sure you get every last bit because it can hurt your gearbox if you leave it in there. Which is why I'm having to thoroughly clean out this gearbox. I love this gearbox shell though. It is nice and like powerful, strong metal. It is, I'm pretty sure it's aluminum, just straight aluminum, which I love. I cannot stand zinc gearboxes. I mean, this has some heft to it, which you always want a shell that has heft, because that means it's going to be strong. It's reinforced around all the edges. It's reinforced on the external side to prevent cracking of any kind. And I really like how this thing is built. It's got the pegs all around it to increase how reinforced it is. And I really like it. It's a good gearbox as far as the shell goes. I didn't even test these bearings yet in it, but hopefully these work. And they feel like, yeah, these will work perfectly fine. They're not falling out, so they're pretty sturdy in there, which is exactly what you want. You don't want just bushings that pretty much fall out when you are turning over your gearbox, because that means they will just sit in there and spin, and that means they are not completely sealed when those gears are spinning, and that can actually break your bearings. I have seen it happen in my early days of teching when I didn't know what I was doing. That is how my friend's M4, or I'm not sure if it was an M4 or what it was, but the bearings completely shattered in it into like a ton of pieces. So I learned never to use loose bearings again. And I mean, they were the right size of bearings. It's just the gearbox shell, I think, came with plastic bearings, and we put the metal ones in there, and those metal ones just did not sit right in the hole. They were not tight at all. So that is what caused that. That gun was running fairly high speed and high FPS because the guy put a fairly strong spring in it, and it ended up practically killing the gearbox as far as I can remember. I think it split the gearbox, like cracked it in the front end and stuff, as well as breaking those bearings. My guess is that all happened pretty much at one time. But nonetheless, I haven't had that problem since because I learned better. So that's good. And these shells are now nice and clean. And because I'm putting these brand new bushings in that have never been used, they just need to be re-greased. I need to press these bearings into this hole because it's going to be fairly stubborn, which I'm actually happy for. Yeah, this one clicked in there nice and good. I just want to make sure it's set right. That it is good. So those are now nice and flush with that. No problems at all. It's in there really tight. Awesome. Same thing with these. The spur gear one didn't seem to want to go in too hard, but it's still in there to where it's not falling out. So good. And then the bevel. Bevel also sits beautifully in there, just nice and tight. So that is something good to note. Even though I had a problem with the glued in solid metal bushings that came from VFC, at least they made it so that the dimensions on the gearbox shell are strong enough to hold up if you do want to put a different set of bushings in there like I have done, which I really like. Not a lot of companies do that anymore. It sucks. These are also going to take some pressing. which I'm perfectly fine with having to press a bearing into its spot, just because that's going to mean it is not going to go anywhere, and I am okay with that. I love the shell even more now, just with the fact that those went in and actually are really nice in there. Okay, so now, do I want to reshim it, is the new question. And I guess I can go ahead and see the stock shim job, because I reshim these things once, but not with these bearings, or bushings, my bad. So I'm going to see just how well they do. My shims fell off my bevel gear. So now that all these are on, I'm just going to set the shell back on top. I think I took a spur. Well, yeah, I might actually want to put real shims, just because I hate it when things are loose like that, but I know that the things are free spinning in there. Plus, I'm pretty sure I put a shim on the bevel that was supposed to go on the spur. I guess is... It was the one that I grabbed thinking it was for the bevel. Shims are always tricky to get off a gear. Yeah, that one was for the spur. It's a completely different color than these other two shims. I don't know why I just put it back on there if I have to take it off again. The bevel gear does not have the auto shim. Yeah, now that's free spinning. Good. Sector gear goes on. And bevel gear. I'll try this again. Well, now it seems that the spur gear the spur gear bushing does not want to stay in, which it needs to with these auto shim gears, otherwise it'll cause a problem later on. Alright, now that's a lot better. Now the bevel is extremely loose, so I might have put the wrong shim on the spur. Which is completely possible. I make mistakes just like anybody else. I am in no way means perfect. Because that time gets thrown all around a ton. I can't stand it. Okay, let's try not to get grease all up in my fingernails, but it's going to happen anyway. I cannot get this stupid thing off. Is it? This is the flathead. replace these two. This is a slightly thinner one. Set that back on. Bushing. Still free spins, which is good. Now there's a much thicker one on the bevel. And if it looks like cracks on this bevel, it's just grease. I can rub it off. Because I looked at that when I first opened the gearbox output, and I'm like, how is my bevel gear cracked? And then I noticed it was just grease. So no big deal. It was just grease that got splattered around on it. Alright, the bevel gear is a lot more secure, but still not as secure as I would like it to be at all. The spur and the sector are both loose, but that's because of that spring system. That might actually be why they had them glued in, so I might actually have to glue these bushings in so that they don't get affected by the spring system and end up tearing up my gearbox. I did not think about that, but I do have some super glue that I can make sure that I only put on the outer edges, so I can do that. It is not a big issue, and I don't plan on having to replace these bushings because these are the best bushings that I could buy. They were like $30 bushings that I bought a long time ago for an old project. I never came across a gun that felt like it deserved it. But nonetheless, I'm going to grab my special glue and I'm going to carefully, very carefully, one, not lose the bushings that I'm trying to glue in. And two, I'm going to have to do this with the utmost precision. Okay. Where is the piece that I need? Where are my pliers? Ah. Found them. This glue is already starting to get to me. It is extremely strong stuff as far as the aroma and contents of it. It is Loctite liquid glue. I use this stuff because it's strong, it's easy to apply, and it dries extremely quick. So now I have a small little spreader that I have made that I'm going to use to place on the edges of the bearings as they are put in. I'm going to use this so that I don't get it all over the place. I'm just going to do very tiny amounts, just because that's all it needs. I'm not going to try and glob anything on there. Plus, if you get glue in the actual bearing part of it, then you're screwed. So that is why I'm doing this very lightly And I don't want any pressure either. I'm just basically letting my little tool do all the work so that I don't press the bearing back down. That should be plenty. Now that it's in there, I just want to make sure that it's set right, so I'm going to hold it. Yeah, good. The inner side is still spinning, which is what you want. The glue is only around the outside, so I'm going to let that sit for just a second. So this is more of a disassembly slash tip guide for gearboxes. I would not recommend doing this yourself unless you feel like you're willing to risk it, because it is a very risky process that normally I wouldn't even consider doing, but I feel like I have enough skill to where I've done it in the past that I can do it now. So that is the only reason why I am doing it. Because I know if I mess this up, I just ruined a perfectly incredible set of $30 bushings. So I definitely would not recommend ever doing this with ceramic bushings. But sometimes I'm a moron and I don't think about that thing ahead of time. And now that I've already done it, I might as well do the others. So it is now in there. I'm going to go ahead and do a spur gear. I'm going to have to be even more careful with this, just because it's a little tricky. I actually want to put something up underneath that so that it doesn't try and push down on me. So I'm going to just take a wadded up piece of cloth that's going to be thick enough that I can sit. Well, if it didn't unwad on me. Up underneath the shell where the spur gear lies, so that I can do this without any interference or dropping of the bushing. Once again, just a light drop of this super glue. And just going around the very outer edge. Carefully not to actually getting it any on the bearing itself, but only around it, and it'll seep into the crack of the actual bearing. So that is what I'm doing here. If you don't have steady hands, I definitely would never even try considering this, because this takes extreme concentration, and I have very unsteady hands, but normally when I'm working with things like this, I'm extremely careful, and it is my gun, so what I do to my gun is completely up to me. Normally, I don't risk this kind of stuff if there's a chance of something bad happening. But with this, it will greatly enhance the performance of the gun, just because it'll keep the outer bearings from spinning, and it'll allow the shimming on the gears to be perfectly aligned, and there won't be any vibration from the bearings themselves. It'll all be done through the actual axes of the bearings. So, I am going to go ahead and go with the spur gear now, or the sector gear, my bad. Flip this over, press that in as far as it can go. And now my little roll is going to set up underneath where the spur gear, or not the spur gear, the sector gear would go, just so again the bushing cannot push down on me as I am gluing it. This takes a lot of concentration, because if you get a single ounce, not even an ounce, just a speck of glue where the turning mechanism of the bearing is, it's just over at that point. You've already ruined it. There's no way to get the glue out. It is seeping into the bearing as you speak, or as I speak. So, well, I don't know. You might not be talking at all, but you know what I mean. It's basically, if you ever get any glue in that system, it's just over at that exact point. There's no way you can save it or anything. The damage is already done. So that's why if you slip up, you're done. There is no slip ups when doing this, which is why it's such a big risk. And I've only done one side so far. I still have to do the other side of the gearbox. And I'm already starting to pretty much sweat. So I'm going to set that off to the side, and I'm going to go ahead and get this side prepped. And this side's going to be a little trickier because the bearings did not want to stay in the gearbox as easily as the other side. At all. I think most of these just wanted to straight fall out. So now that that is done, just going to let that sit there, and as you can see, I can push all of those through extremely easily, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing this. The other side was able to hold on to them a lot better than this side is. I've just got to make sure that stays completely in there without any problems. This side's going to be a lot trickier because of this little piece, which I'm actually going to remove for the sake of this, just so I can make sure that nothing goes wrong. This back up so it has the most thickness. A little bit of fuzz. hope this all goes as smoothly as the other side did. If you get a little bit too much glue, you want to make sure you shake it off, and you just want to do tiny little dribbles. It doesn't even want to have the shape of a drop yet. That's how small you want it. You basically just want it to be sitting on the edge of whatever thing you're using to spread it. Never apply the glue directly from the bottle because you will mess it up. It just comes out too quickly in order for you to be able to get it precise enough. I'm trying to be extremely careful right now. As soon as one of these gets messed up, I am in a lot of trouble. The inner piece of the bearing still does turn freely, which is good. This spur gear bushing is not going to be as easy though, because it is extremely loose. Just gotta be very careful. Sorry I'm not talking much, I'm just trying to make sure I stay focused when I'm doing this. That is on there. And I'm literally putting just the minuscule amount of glue just so that they stay put and don't move at all. Just because any vibration at all is not going to be good for it. Now for the last one. And this process does take quite a bit of time, so I apologize for just how long the video is going to be. I did not anticipate having to do these kind of things, because I actually forgot about it. But it does give me a nice time to actually talk about a lot of this stuff. Just because in other tech videos, I probably will not be talking about the ins and outs. I'll just be doing it. But now I feel like I have the need to do to talk about it, just because it is something very risky. And like I said before, I would not recommend trying this unless you want to take the risk, which the only reason I'm doing it is I have a backup if I end up messing it up. Which is really the only even reason why I'm even attempting this. Is just because I have a backup. I'm going to let that dry for just a second. And I'm actually going to go ahead and replace the cylinder. I wonder if I have a double O-ring cylinder head, because I have... This cylinder head seems to have a spacer. Is this a bore-up cylinder? It does look like it. Might actually be. But I still definitely need a non-ported cylinder head rather than that giant of a port. So this cylinder might actually be better, because I believe it's also a bore-up cylinder head. This one's a lot thicker. I want more air volume, and also being non-ported, so I'm actually going to go with this one. And just to make sure that the piston and stuff still fit. Yeah, they fit just fine. Make sure, do I have any other cylinder heads that I'm not currently using that I would prefer using? I don't know. I have a lot. There's that one, which I'm pretty sure has way too big of a Zorbo pad. And all these others that I don't even want to consider using. And a couple other Zorbo pads that I bought. So yeah, that is not going to work. And it is also it's pretty much an identical cylinder head to the one that's on it anyway. I really wish I had a double O-ring one. I might be getting a Lonex here soon. So that's what I'll probably use it for. This does have a very nice pad on it though. So that's pretty good. Just gonna attach this. It went in there fairly tight. I could probably use some Teflon tape and seal it up just a little better. But it's not the biggest concern right now. Once that's in the gearbox, it's not going anywhere. So it's in there, it's not loose, so it's going to have the air seal that I want it to have. Now let's test the air compression. Yep, air compression is nice and good. So my air seal, good. I'm actually going to test it with the air nozzle on it, make sure I'm not losing any out of it. Which fits pretty good on there. It's not too tight, it's not too loose, so. Oh yeah, that air seal's almost perfect. Awesome. At least VFC does a few things right. They have a good shell, they have a good cylinder head, they have a good air nozzle, they have a good piston head. And their wiring is pretty decent from what I can tell. I'd probably end up. I will end up fully rewiring the gun at some point with a just straight silver wire, like probably 16 gauge silver wire, and doing that eventually. It won't be anytime soon, but it will be eventually. But I mean, right now it's got silver plated wiring. It's a bit thin for my taste, but because of my MOSFET, it doesn't overheat at all, so I have no problems with it. The MOSFET basically does all the work for all of the wires. It takes all of the resistance and everything out of that. And it's a really nice MOSFET. It's the Gate 3.2 Murph MOSFET unit. It has all the programmable stuff and everything else like that. So I really like it. It has worked really well. It's got my gun running extremely well with it. But like I said, I will be getting a much stronger torque motor for it because it is set up for active braking right now. And really that only works if you have a good torque motor. If you have any kind of low torque motor or high speed motor, it is just not going to do very well with that feature. Plus, I always find torque motors are the better way to go anyways, because they give more speed and torque anyways. They're not just for high FPS, when a lot of people think that's what they're for. Most torque motors have the same RPM rating as a high-speed motor, it's just they have a lot stronger magnets. So they're able to have a lot better trigger response, as well as being able to handle a stronger spring if they need to. So I don't even know why high-speed motors still exist. I think high-torque motors are the way to go, bar none. I mean, just because they are technically a high-speed and a high-torque motor, even if it just says high-torque. It doesn't have to say both, because if you look at the specs of a high-speed and a high-torque, a high torque basically just means it has strong neodymium magnets in it, and it can reach speeds up to 40,000 RPM, whereas a high speed does not have the neodymium magnets. It just has, I'm not sure which magnets it has, but it's not very torque magnets. It's not very strong magnetism. And they also reach speeds up to 40,000 RPM. But with a torque motor, you also get trigger response and just better life out of the motor. Whereas a high speed, you don't get that. So, I mean, you get the best out of both going high torque over high speed. So, I mean, it's still the decision of the consumer, but, I mean, it's sort of a no-brainer for me. I'm always going to get a high torque motor just because it's both. I mean, I'd rather get two rather than one for the price of, since they're both the same price. I don't know why high-speed motors are a thing. I think they're just a way of saying, yeah, these are faster than a standard motor, but they're not as far as the upgradedness of a high-torque motor. Which, I mean, someone might have a different opinion about that, but I'm just going off of what I've seen personally. Alright, all this glue has dried. All these bearings are nice and tight in there. So, I'm actually going to take, oops. Is that just one shim? What did that come off of? I need this one. It's not going to be fun to get. Not like anything is. Got it. Now to take one off of this, don't lose my tool. Put this on the bevel. Put the small one on the spur. Just because the spur has the auto shim, it doesn't need to have perfect shimming. It just has to be able to free spin like that. So good. Basically all the auto shim is, it's a spring. I mean, technically yes, you can get rid of that and get rid of a lot of the friction that is caused by that spring. Which I will do eventually now that I'm thinking about it. Because I see the reason people don't like it now. Just from after seeing how it actually affects the rotation speed of the gears when trying to shim it. But as far as like an out-of-the-box gun, it works just fine. It still works better than a lot of like really crappy shim jobs that other companies do. Because I mean, it works, it just is not as good as it could be with a normal shim set. So if you do plan on running 25 rounds per second and up, you probably have already changed out the auto shim for something else, for just normal shims. Because the sector gear also has the spring on it to basically just shim it, whereas the bevel gear is just shimmed normally. This is on now. Bevel gear, very, very minuscule movement, but that's what you want. The spur and the sector, they have the auto shim, so I'm not worried about those at all. They free spin beautifully. Like, I'm actually amazed they free spin that good with the auto shim. That is actually a really nice free spin when I do the finger test. They are spinning for a good almost 2.5 seconds after I release it. So that is really good. So they're not all bad, but I can sort of see why people have a problem with them. So I'm actually going to keep it for now. That actually did really well for just the build that I'm going to be doing. So that was actually good enough for me to not have a problem with it. I'm actually going to remove the gears because they probably need to be cleaned from any kind of gunk as well. Need to make sure this gets put back on the bevel. So that's not lost. So now I'm just going to remove the auto shim. And I'm going to clean this thing. The top of this gear is extremely dirty. I believe I see sunlight coming through my window, which means it is probably like 5 or 6 o'clock my time in the morning. Just shows you that I am a night person and not much of a day person. I get more done at night than I do in the day. Some people have a problem with this, but I'm a night person. That's just how I am. I mean, I get the same amount of work done at night that I would in the day. Other than yard work. Yard work I do have to be up in the daytime for. Otherwise, I'd probably get a lot of people yelling at me in the middle of the night saying, "Turn off the mower!" And that'd be bad. Because a lot of the people that live in my neighborhood are old people. So I don't need grandmas and grandpas coming outside their door yelling at me every morning. That's probably about as clean as I can get it. Trying to get it in those little grooves, but it's just a little tricky. And that's about as clean a gear as I'm going to get. Auto shim is nice and cleaned off. Now for the other gears. Take off the spring. And take off the sector clip. I can, but I don't think I need to. Just because it's pretty pressed on there pretty well. Get all this gunk out of here. It's good grease, but it has been 6 months and about almost 30,000 rounds through these gears, so it needs just about a good cleaning as anything else. G3 is probably going to get a cleaning tomorrow. I'm going to try and clean out these cracks as best I can, because there is a bit of gunk jammed up in there. Through all the little slots in the gear. I realize there's nothing on camera to see right now. And that's just because I'm trying to use the light to see what I'm doing. Just know that I'm taking a piece of cloth and going in the gear, trying to get out all the old grease. Just because it needs it. Okay, there's that. Now the bevel's not that dirty, but might as well while I'm doing the others. Yep, that's all clean. I'm gonna stick that back on the sector gear. There's one thing I do like about this gear set though. The sector gear has a enlarged rear tooth. So it's the last tooth that hits. So that's probably why this piston works a lot better, because it'll hit last on this metal tooth. And so it's able to take a lot more beating than a normal sector gear would. So I actually do like that. That is a feature about this gear set that I do like a lot. And it is, from what I was told, it is a slightly high-speed gear set. I think an 18.1 is what I was told. I'm pretty sure that's like slightly high-speed. But it feels like a standard gear set. It looks like a standard gear set. I wouldn't be able to tell the difference if I held two right next to each other. So just know that. I mean, it's not any kind of super torque or super high speed torque gear set. It's just basically your standard. So you're not going to be running 30 plus rounds a second on this gear set, nor are you going to be pushing 450 FPS. So just be concerned of that. It is not meant for those extremes, but I am not going for those extremes. I am perfectly happy with the 25 rounds a second that I get. And I will be bumping up the FPS, but only to about 400 or so, maybe 390, 380, somewhere in that area. just so that I can get a little bit better range out of my gun. Even though it does get extremely good range now, but that's just because it has a flat hop in it with a modify barrel and all that other stuff, custom junk that I've done to it. So this thing can hit probably 250 feet away fairly accurately if I'm not completely in full auto. But when I first tested this thing after I did my first modifications, it was able to hit a tree at 250 feet away. So it's extremely accurate for what it is. Even if it's only shooting 350 FPS, it was able to do that consistently, which surprised the crap out of me. And that was using iron sights. It wasn't even using an optic of any kind, which shocked the crap out of me. It was that consistent. And I mean, I'm a fairly decent shot, but I mean, I gotta give the gun some credit. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and just get everything back ready. Where is my silicone oil? It is... Where did I set it? It was right here just a second ago. There it is. My gun lubrication oil. It's just silicone oil, basically. Yeah, it's for firearms, fishing reels, and all mechanisms. And in the pure lubricant thing, it's like a light, pure, colorless oil. And on the stuff, it says silicone based. It is a silicone based lubrication. I just like it because it seems like it's not as thin as normal silicone oil, but it is thin enough to where it won't gunk up anything, which is why I really like it. Plus it comes in a spray bottle, so I can just hold it over, spray one time, and it covers the entire gearbox with a very even amount of silicone oil, which is something I really like. Just one spritz normally does it, and then get a little bit on the bearings. It gets it in the track of the piston, and just about everywhere else it needs it to go. So one side down, I'll do this side now. Just one spritz on both sides. There's plenty. You definitely don't want to do any more than that, because as soon as the gear starts spinning, it'll start flinging some out, which is perfectly fine. But what I normally do is I take a piece of cloth, just a small piece of cloth, and then I spray a couple sprays worth onto the cloth just so it gets it damp, and then I go around on the gears just because I don't want to gunk up the gears too much, just to where they're nice and shiny afterwards, because that's really all you need. Just on both sides. So they're nice and shiny. Get a couple more spritz. Stuff does get fairly messy pretty quick. Alright, gears are greased, gearbox is greased. Now I'm going piston while I'm at it, just because it has some of that gunk still in it. From where the tappet plate pretty much exploded. That's what I'm going to say it did. Considering it's in 3 pieces, so a break or a crack is not going to cause that, so I'm going to go with explosion, because that is the most consistent with what could have happened. There was a lot of gunk in the back of this piston. Just going to clean the outside of it, just make sure I get it all cleared off of any kind of dust, things like that, as well as the spring guide, because I'm going to guess, yeah, some of it got on there too. Definitely got gunked up in a few areas, but overall not too bad. Nothing that's going to affect it in how it performs. I got every bit that I could out of it. So now it's basically putting the gun back together. Make sure that this fits well with the air nozzle, and I don't need to lose that air nozzle. Where did that go? So I'm going to take this just to make sure it fits well, and that it does extremely well, actually. It's like it was made for it, almost. That fits pretty well. Normally what I would do at this point is take a tiny glob of super glue just around that front edge where it meets with the air nozzle, just so that there's no chance that it can slip or break. But this is a fairly strong air nozzle, so I don't think I'm going to have that problem. Plus, if I ever have to replace it, I don't want to have to replace both. But yeah, I've got to find a stiffer spring than that, so I'm going to go into my giant box of springs and see what I can come up with. Some are extremely way too powerful. Others, there's no friggin' way that I'm putting that inside of my gun, because it will break it. That's a pretty close pair for it. It's a little bit stronger, but not too strong. And then I do have an M120 that I could put in it, but I don't think that I'm going to, just because it's a little bit too strong. But this one's a fairly stiff spring. I mean, the stock one is extremely light, and these are just a little bit longer, whereas the green one is also just a little bit longer. But this one just compresses so easily, whereas this green one is fairly stiff, and this one's pretty much a good medium, I think. So yeah, I'm probably going to end up going with this one, which I believe is an M115, maybe an M120. I think this green one is an M125, or it's the Sistema M120, or it might be the Prometheus. Yeah, this might be the Prometheus M120, or SP120. But I'm actually going to go with this one. This is a good happy medium that I still think my gun is going to do good with. even if it drops a little bit of FPS, because I know I'm upgrading springs, I know it's going to, but because I also changed out those bushings, I re-greased it, maybe it'll all balance out, and I won't have to sacrifice too much rate of fire, because that is a very strong suit of my gun. But if it lowers it a little bit, it might be good, because I've been trying to get my box mag to feed in it, and I think the gun just fired too fast for the box mag to keep up. So I'm hoping that's part of it. I don't know, but I mean, I can hope. Because I mean, I can also turn down my rate of fire with my MOSFET, but I sort of didn't want to if I didn't have to. So yeah, I'm going to wait on having to do anything like that. I'm just going to put back in the trigger assembly. Might want to put that back in there, otherwise I'll have to take it out again. I can definitely see the damage that would have been caused had I kept using the LiPo without the MOSFET, because my trigger contacts are white when they are not supposed to be. Or are they? Are they supposed to be white? Can't tell. I see copper, I see silver, I see just bare white. No, it is supposed to be silver. Okay. Yeah, it started creating a film when I was running this on a LiPo without my MOSFET, which I only did for like, I think 10 minutes at the most, because it was just for a test fire. As soon as I got this gun, I ended up putting the MOSFET in it because I knew it was going to run a LiPo, which, if you didn't already know, do not run a LiPo without a MOSFET. It will kill your gun. It's not even the fact of killing like your gears or anything else. It'll kill your trigger assembly. It'll kill your wires. It'll kill your trigger assembly. It'll kill your trigger contacts. It will do one of those. If you think it's not going to happen to me, bull crap. It happens to everyone. It's just the way LiPos are. Without a MOSFET that's like wired in, hardwired in, that deflects the arcing of the trigger contacts, you will burn out your trigger contacts very fast. I don't care if you're using a 15C LiPo, I don't care if you're using a 7.2 volt LiPo, it's gonna happen. LiPos are just known for causing trigger failure. Which is why, like, people don't like LiPos. They kill guns. It's because people don't understand, like, you're not supposed to run it without some sort of non-trigger arcing way for the trigger. And a MOSFET eliminates that. It's like in 10 minutes alone, these trigger contacts were already gunked up with stuff. And they would have, if it like burned out very, very quickly. Especially with these wires and if they're only silver coated and not just straight silver, it would have killed it. And now that I've seen that, it actually makes me even more convinced that you have to have a MOSFET in order to run a LiPo. Which, I mean, I already knew, but I actually have proof now. Because I ran this thing for 10 minutes on my 11.1 without a MOSFET, which I shouldn't have been doing. But I had no other battery at the time, and I didn't want to do it, but I had no choice. Because it had to be tested before the next game and before I put the MOSFET in. Just to make sure that it actually worked. So I wouldn't have to send it back. Which thankfully I didn't. Because the warranty is void now, because I've opened up the gearbox. But I don't care. This gun is not going anywhere. I love this gun. This is by far my favorite gun out of all of them. And it's not even the fact that I paid the most amount of money for this gun over any of my other guns. It's the fact that it's so beautiful and so flawless in every way. I love it so much. Well, I can't exactly say flawless because I have come across some flaws now, but you know what I mean. It's just, it was built so well that I almost have no complaints about it, except for, obviously, the plastic of the tappet plate, which I don't know why they even thought about using that. I mean, it's VFC. I know they have just the perfect of externals, but I mean, normally they have pretty good internals too, so I don't know why they would have even thought that was a good idea. Alright, that is in there. Now I can start putting in, I actually need to put in the cutoff lever. Because I have forgotten that so many times when working on guns, it's ridiculous. And then I put the gearbox back together, I looked down at my table, I noticed that sitting there, and then I just hung my head in shame. Never forget the cutoff lever. It is extremely needed if you ever want to have any kind of semi-auto function or burst, ever, or in my case, burst, ever again. I need to make sure this gets put back on before I forget. I forget about a lot of things when I'm currently doing something. Oh, crap. Spring goes on first. These wires are staying pretty well in place, which makes me happy because I've had a lot of other guns that did not do that, and it pissed me off. A lot of these guns tick me off a lot. Like, I can't even handle working on some of these guns just because they aggravate me so much. And yes, the SIG aggravated me, but it was for a good friend, so I'd happily do it again. But it did aggravate the crap out of me. I mean, I can't lie about that. As well as these M14s, they aggravate the crap out of me. There's a lot of guns that aggravate the crap out of me. Basic M4s, surprisingly enough, only gun that does not aggravate the crap out of me just because they're simple. Compared to all the other guns I've ever worked on, other than a P90. You can't get easier than a P90. I don't care who you are. Because it's literally 2 screws, gearbox. That's it. And it might not be the most secure thing in the world, but it's so easy to work on. I love the version 6 gearbox just so much. It's so easy. Everything about it is awesome. Although I do really like the M60 and the other M249 gearboxes. Those are also really nice because they're easy to get out, they're easy to disassemble. The quick change spring system on those, I trust completely. I have no doubt in my mind that they're affecting the gearbox in any way structurally, because the spring guide on them is basically this freaking huge, and then you have a little part that actually hooks onto the spring, so it's this on a giant metal bar that's all inside the gearbox. Actually, I have it right here. This is the M60 spring guide. This thing is a monster. Like, this piece does not clip into the gearbox. This clips into the gearbox. I love this. This is genius. I love everything about it. I never want it to change. because we were able to drop in like an M160 into a, or not an M160, an M140 into the M60, and it was shooting 485 FPS on a .25, which was our field limit. Like, it was right at the limit, and it was consistent, and it fired perfectly fine. The piston is actually still in good condition, and it's a crappy plastic piston, surprisingly enough. But the air nozzle did break, and I have a feeling I know why. It was because I tried putting a different kind of bucking on the M60, because I didn't realize it had used a proprietary bucking when I first did it. And so that might have been the cause of it. It did that and then just ruined it. But I did since buy a brand new bucking for the M60. I'm just waiting on the replacement air nozzle, and I can probably put my red tappet plate into it and it should work just fine. So yeah, this should go pretty well. Let me put the trigger in. This doesn't actually look like a normal M4 trigger. This is actually a proprietary VFC SCAR trigger, which I'm actually okay with this. I didn't notice it at first, but it is not a M4 trigger. I actually like that a lot. Because the other SCAR I have just uses a normal M4 trigger, and a SCAR does not use an M4 trigger on the real one. So I am perfectly okay with this. I don't care if it's proprietary. I don't plan on replacing the trigger, even though I've had to for M4s. But this one is solid. I like this. This is solid as friggin' crap. And the trigger pull on it is not that much at all. Like the stock trigger pull, not much at all, which is really nice. And I can set it to where it's even less trigger pull, but I don't want to, because then I'd have to do a lot of maintenance and all this other kind of crap, and I don't want to get into any of that. The trigger pull's fine on it for me. See, I put up with a lot of things about my guns. Like, I don't care if I could have a minuscule less trigger pull. Like, all of my things, I care about reliability and the range and accuracy. I don't care about FPS. I don't care about rate of fire, even though my guns tend to have a very high rate of fire. I care about responsiveness, reliability, and range and accuracy. I mean, that's about it. I mean, I think that's what everyone should only have to care about on their gun. I mean, if I had a gun that only shot 320 FPS, but it was able to hit targets at 300 feet away, yeah, I'd probably keep it at that. The only reason that I'm upgrading the spring in this is just because it got depressed. It did used to shoot almost 380 to 390, and it must not have released the spring after one of the times I started playing with it. So, I mean, stuff like that happens. You can't help it. And I think this is my upgraded spring that I was going to put in it. It feels like it. And I don't see any other spring laying on my table. So, I'm going to guess that was it, I hope. I'm going to try and see if I can find the other spring that it came with. Which I did, yep, so that is the upgraded spring. Good. Hopefully I don't bust anything in any of my parts, because that would suck a lot. And I'm going to go ahead and put in my gears. That is in. Set that forward. And attach this. The good thing about this auto shim for the sector gear, the tappet plate has nothing to push up on to like press the selector gear out of its little spot. So that is one thing I do like about the auto shim for the selector gear. Yeah, it's like, it's trying to push up, but there's nothing to push up on. So that is a feature that I really, really like. Can't see if there's a hole for that spring or not. No, that is a full solid piece. Okay. Anti-reversal latch, which needs to be heavily cleaned because I forgot to do that before. Anti-reversal latches always tend to get the most gunked up because it's basically catching all the gunk that comes off of the other gears, because it gets fed down the line to the bevel gear and then it gets put on the anti-reversal latch. So it probably gets gunked up more than anything else in your gearbox. You never want to put that back in without cleaning it off. It's just bad news. Alright, now it's nice and clean. And this has a very strong spring on it, so hopefully it won't affect me putting in the gears at all. Which, it stayed good enough for me. Look around the table, make sure I haven't forgotten anything before I end up putting it all back together. What did that go to? Oh boy, what did I forget? Forgot something, and I don't know what. Yeah, what did this go to? This is gonna bug me until I figure out what this screw went to. It looks like the screw for, where is it? No, that uses an Allen key, never mind. What did this go to? This is gonna bug me. What other screw is there? There's three small screws in the gearbox. What did this go to? It's gonna bug me until I find out. I screwed on the cutoff lever, I screwed on the trigger assembly, I screwed on this. Where could it have gone? Or what could it have gone to is the better question. I honestly don't know. Huh. Does this go to the M60? No. This is definitely for this. What did I take this out of? I only remember taking out 3 small screws. This is gonna bug the living crap out of me until I figure this out. Is there a screw that's on this gearbox that I didn't know about? Possibly. I don't want to put this back together without knowing what it actually goes to. Alright, any of these other little oddity pieces that might spark my memory. Let's see, pistol grip screw. That goes on. Where is it? Where's the latch? That goes on that. Those don't go screw on. I'm really hoping this came just as a spare screw, because I really have no idea. All the screws that I took out are back in it. Guess I'll just put her back together. I might figure it out when I get the gearbox completed. That clipped. That is in. I think. Maybe not. That is attached. What is preventing you from closing? Wires are out of the way. Something is in the way, and I don't know what. I bet I know what it is. It's the piston. No, maybe not. Why is this gearbox not wanting to close? What is in the way? Take it off and see if I can figure it out. Oh, that's it. When I rotated this around, the tappet plate was not able to sit on the sector gear. Why did that jam up? Oh, that would have been bad. The sector gear was not even lined up with the piston correctly. That would have been very bad. Much better. Now it actually closed. And why is my trigger locked up now? No matter what I do. There we go. better. That is all together. Air nozzle works. Piston works properly. Trigger functions. No wires are being pinched. Okay. All good. Yay. I should be getting quite a lot more FPS now that I have the non-ported piston, or the non-ported cylinder, as well as the upgraded spring. I should be getting a little bit better rotation out of the new bushings. And everything has been cleaned up nice and all that. At least that's how I'm hoping it's going to go. So, might as well just put everything back together and hope for the best. Because now I get to deal with the complicated part of this, or the most complicated part of this gun, and that's putting it back together, because the selector assembly is quite a bit of a pain, as it is on a lot of other guns, but mostly the pain on this. And I thought I didn't like it on the SIG. I think this gun is one gun that I actually dislike the selector fire even more, but I also knew that the way they have it is probably the best way that you can have it for a SCAR, if you're going to do a genuine SCAR. So I can't be too mad at them, but oh well. I'm just tightening these down a little bit, and then I will come in with my big screwdriver and tighten them down all the way. I can just screw them in a lot quicker with this smaller one. Sorry, my hands are blocking most of the view. It's just how I normally do it. And I don't ever do it super tight, but I do it to where it's obviously not loose at all, but to where it's not like I'm having to force it tight. Okay, now I can put the selector plate back on. It is back on and freely moving. I think just put the spring back on. That was fairly easy. I hope that doesn't ever get locked up, because that'd be bad. And I actually make sure grease it just a little. That's exactly what I don't want it doing, is getting stuck in that all the way position. Still works good, still all that other good stuff. Okay. Alright, now I get to deal with what I call the little buggers, which are these little round dials. These are such a pain to deal with. Because if you don't do it right, you gotta do it multiple times. Before I forget, I'm gonna make sure these get put back on. So these are sort of needed. I had something similar like this on my other scar, but instead of it having a arm jolting out from it, it was just a circle. Now I need tiny bit, which I'm pretty sure is this one. No, it's this one. Or is it? No, it's this one. Yeah. Just gonna screw this back on. Not in enough. Crap. Let's get it going further. Now it's on there. Good. These little things. Actually, the inner side of my receiver is also covered in this nasty dust, so take a piece of cloth, just wipe out the inside. So when that tappet plate went, it actually caused quite a bit of ruckus. I'm amazed I hadn't noticed it. The lines on this have to line up exactly with the lines on that. Just like something like that, but they go in. I can't stand these stupid things. They bug the living crap out of me just because they're always trying to fall out. But you basically have to set the round pieces in there so that the line lines up. Dadgummit. I normally try and line it up vertically with both of them just so they're even. Dadgummit. Does the two circles go outwards? Crap. This is going to be even trickier. Basically, you have to take it and pinch it on the outer side while placing it in to this, had I remembered all this beforehand, it probably would have caused a lot less stress on me. Because now I remember this being a literal pain and I had to do it a lot of times. It's like my fingers are already friggin' coming off. I have to line up the trigger, I have to line up everything. Pretty sure that's not lined up at all, to be completely honest. I hate this so much. I'm just going to put one of these on here so I can sort of tell. Again, when putting on these selectors, do not lose the silver ball. Yeah, these are completely off. That is going to be very close, and I realize you can't see a lot, and what the crap. I mean, seriously, what the crap. This is supposed to be vertical. I mean, I really hope that's it. I'm hoping everything right now that is it. This is why it's supposed to stay in semi. Doing all of this stuff. Go ahead and put on the other side. Piece. Just, I'm extremely hopeful right now. It's going off to the right. That is not. Let's see. It is going forward. That is going backwards, so it needs to be just like that. This is so tricky to do, just to be perfectly honest. Just because it's a lot of careful placement of all this stuff. Making sure nothing moves is part of it. Alright, so when you're placing the ball back in for these selector plates, you want to make sure it's in the slot on the receiver. So you want to have it pointed at some area before you put the selector on so that it can sit right on the spring when you put it on. And you'll know because it'll try and spring back on you, which is exactly what you want. Make sure to have the right Allen key. You're going to press down as tight as you can, and then you're just going to tighten it with your Allen key till it's nice and tight. And don't try and turn it until both sides are on. I made this problem before and it ended up screwing it up and I had to restart. So again, just set it in the hole, carefully set it on top, press down, and tighten. And I almost still wouldn't recommend trying to turn it until the entire receiver assembly is completed. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my MOSFET wire and just put it out of the way right now while I get these wires situated. Actually, the spring, I was wrong with what I just did. The spring goes, or where does it go? No, this whole system goes right in there. So you have to press on the spring, push it in, so when it goes in, it has some spring on it. Part of the spring didn't make it. So how you get these in, you just press down at an angle and then angle it down just like that. And that one piece that we unscrewed earlier, it looks like this. We're just going to set right back on top of there and screw it back down. And replace the big screw in the back of the gearbox. Make sure that's fairly tight. Doesn't have to be extremely tight, but just make sure it's tight. Make sure everything still works. Again, don't mess with the selector fire until the whole receiver, including the pistol grip, and the mag release is back together. And we will be doing the mag release next. So start with your latch, stick it up through, make sure it gets through the hole in the gearbox. Hold it from the other side, place your spring on it, and then your little notch. Make sure that the hole on this is facing downward. I might actually have to loosen it because it seemed like it tightened back up on me. Just want to make sure that it sits on there the proper way. It's not supposed to be sticking out as much. So if you have to, just take the Allen screw, well, not all the way out. I'm going to set it out just for now, just because it'll be easier when I'm trying to put this back together. And you're just going to fiddle with it until you're able to actually screw it in to the latch, and then it'll tighten up fairly quickly when it's good, and then it'll work just like it's supposed to, and you'll have your ambidextrous magazine release back on and good. So now we're going to put the pistol grip back on it, but I'm actually not going to put the motor back into it because I am going to replace the motor. I'm not going to do that in this video, just because I will have to take the motor out of another gun in order to do so. So I'll just do that on my own time. It's pretty much slide the motor back up in there, replace the motor plate, adjust your motor height, basic stuff. Obviously, if you're watching this video, you probably know how to tech on a couple other guns. At least I would hope you would. This is not a very easy beginner's gun to ever try and tech on. I'd try and start on an M4 or something so you can get the basics down. This is my newest gun. I've had plenty of other guns that I've worked on in the past. So I have some experience working on these special models and stuff like this. So if you're new to tech work, I would not recommend using the VFC Scar as a test platform at all. Just remember that, and I'd stick more to the M4, maybe an AK, P90, Thompson even. G3s are fairly easy just because they're still basic version 2s, and they too have a selector switch specialty about them, and I will probably do another video on working on it because it too needs work. But yeah, probably just stick to M4s for now if you're going to be practicing tech work. M4s are probably the most standard that you're going to come across anyways. So learn on those before trying to go into something else. I speak from personal experience on this. Just don't try and do something crazy before you're ready, because you will get yourself into a lot of trouble doing that. And I'm going to go ahead and finish up putting everything on here, and then I'm going to wrap this video up in a quick little summary of what all has been done and final words on the job. So right now I'm just putting the motor grip back on. Slides back on there and tighten down. I gotta find the screw. I need the light for a second. I always try and get it nice and tight because a pistol grip is very easy to loosen. So you want to make sure they're nice and tight so they do not try and get loose on you. Pliers. That's what I need. So I can put this screw back in without it getting into the gearbox. That would suck. Because then I'd have to take the entire gun apart if I couldn't shake the screw out. Which I've had to do on a SIG. On that SIG that I was working on. Which, as far as I know, it actually turned out really well. And all that, so I think it turned out pretty well. And now that the receiver's back together, you can go ahead and test your fire selector and make sure it works. Like safe, semi, I'm guessing that's because of the cutoff lever doing that right now, and full auto, so that works. I really wish this was more sturdy, because right now I'm actually, you can still do it with one hand, but I almost find myself having to do like a double hand on both sides, just because I feel for the structural side of it. But I mean, it is able to do with one hand, thankfully, on either side. So thankfully, I was able to get that back together correctly this time, because I've been dealing with it having a bad selector now for a few months. Yeah, that's just the cutoff lever hitting the selector. That will actually change as soon as this gun is fired about once, so I don't have to worry about that. It's just the way the gears are set right now, along with the tappet plate and everything else. But it works. This is what I wanted. So I'm going to go ahead and attach it back to the upper receiver. I can put in the motor another time. The upper receiver for my gun is gigantic, and it's full metal, so it's nice and hefty. In the best sense of the word, I guess. I'll try and feed this MOSFET wire up through this drilled hole that I've got. When you're putting it back together, just make sure the rear side goes in first, and then you pop up the front half, basically just reversing the way you did it to take it off. That's the best way I can describe it. See if I can get it through this tiny hole and feed it through. And I got it. Good. And I'm only having to do this MOSFET stuff because mine is rigged up with a full-featured MOSFET. If you do not have a full-featured MOSFET, you probably don't have to do anything that I'm doing right now, so I mean, it'd be a little tricky to explain what I'm doing right now anyways, because half of the stuff is almost foreign to me if I hadn't have been doing it for so long. I'm going to shove that back up in there. I'm going to get my little extension plug out the top of the stock. I'm going to replace my butt pad. Which side at the top? This side at the top. Thankfully it actually has a little thing that says up. Otherwise I would get this thing flipped upside down all the time. That's on there. This is out. Only thing left is the motor. and putting that in, but all of the wires are now situated. So as far as this gun, it is pretty much done. What we did was, or what I did was, I disassembled it, I got into the gearbox, I discovered the problem of the air nozzle not moving, which was a tappet plate split into 3 pieces total. So replaced that with a reinforced decent tappet plate. I believe it's a either it's a GNP tappet plate or a something else that I got. It might be a JG, or no, it's not a JG. I can't remember. It's probably a GNP though, which is really good. I've been using them for a while and I like them. Other than that, we replaced the stock full metal bushings. They're not ball bearing bushings, they're just solid, and they were glued in, so we pressed those out, or I pressed those out. I don't know why I keep saying we. You didn't do anything, I did all the work, you're just sitting here watching me. But I pressed it out and replaced it with ceramic ball bearing bushings, which I've been saving for a while, so they are being put to a good use right now. As well as cleaning the gun, re-greasing it, cleaning off all the little parts, putting on a non-ported cylinder head, because the cylinder head that was on it was ported, and I'm no longer using the stock inner barrel length. I'm using a 469 millimeter inner barrel length, I'm pretty sure, or I might be using a 500. I think I'm using a 500 millimeter length type bore. So I decided to go with a non-ported cylinder head because it does not need a ported cylinder head for being that long of a barrel. I don't think there were any other changes, just your minor, just checking everything out, taking everything down, cleaning it, replacing it, re-shimming the bevel gear, making sure all that was nice and good, and I'm pretty sure that's it. Then we reassembled and got everything set right. I said we again, didn't I? And now the only thing left is I'm going to be putting a upgraded motor from a G3 into this gun. But I've got to take the motor out of the G3 and put it into this gun, and then I will put the motor that was in here, which is just a stock VFC standard motor. I'm pretty sure it comes from, I'm not sure because it's completely blank. It almost looks identical to a classic Army motor though. So it's just a standard motor. There's not that much torque to it. It's not a dead motor. It's a perfectly fine working motor. It works actually really well. But I'm going to be putting in a much better motor into this. And I will be doing another review about this gun after all these parts are in and all of that. I'll probably record a test fire later today when I get that motor swap done. But that is going to be it for me for today. This video should be going up here in about an hour after I quit recording. And it should be all set. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, a like and a subscribe is extremely appreciated. If you have any questions about any of this kind of stuff, about tech work, about this gun, about any questions about how to disassemble certain parts, please leave it in the comments below. I get them sent to my text messaging phone on my, I just get it sent straight to my email, which I receive as a text message on my phone. So I get them instantly, and I will try to reply as soon as I possibly can. Normally it's fairly quick, so if you have any questions, be sure to message me. I will be sure to answer any questions you guys have. And just be sure to go and watch Armageddon, because if you haven't already seen it and you are an avid airsofter, you're probably going to want to go check it out. It has been a long project of mine that I've been working on over the summer, and it is finally complete now. and I have been having a lot of fun with it. So please go check that out. It's awesome. I mean, if you want to know something about it, Airsoft tank, as best the way that I can put it. Well, it's more of a tank body, but it's still a tank. So go ahead and check that out. That would help me out a lot. But I thank you guys for being here. If you guys want to see more, just like I said, leave it in the comments, and I'll see you next time.